that you had some time to relax over dinner and drinks. I hope you're not too tired for the rest of the day today. So this is the second day of our conference. For myself, I think it's going really well. We had a fantastic set of sessions yesterday, and we have another fantastic set of sessions today as well. The first keynote today, we are actually quite privileged. Today we have 3 keynotes, Pontus, Simon, and Nancy. The first keynote is Pontus Westerberg, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Pontus. He's been a fantastic friend of the project, Regional Futures. We've begun to know each other quite well over the last few years through UN Habitat, and he's been very kind and generous in giving his advice as one of the advisory board members on the project. So Pontus, if you don't know Pontus Westerberg, he was lead in the UN Habitat's flagship program on people-centered smart cities, and that's how we had met. He has advised governments on digital inclusion, civic technologies, smart cities, and urban innovation in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Europe. He represented UN Habitat in the steering group on the Cities for Digital Rights Coalition, the UN Working Group on Artificial Intelligence, and the advisory group of the Finnish-Estonian Smart City Center of Excellence. He is now leading an NGO startup, very important, which is public teaching for... Teaching public services. Sorry, it's a mouthful. Teaching public service for the digital age, sorry. And he is actually teaching public servants on how to use digital technology. So he's really, really important for us in this conference, primarily also because he lends very important practitioner insight on how these things get done, how digital capacity is actually built in the government. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Pontus. We're looking forward to your talk. You have 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Diana. Nice to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. Let's see if I can get this. This one. Okay, so I want to talk about digital government failure and what we might be able to do about that. So, remember this. It feels sometimes like it's from a different world, but it's just about kind of 10 years ago or something like that when Obama was president of the United States. And American politics was all about healthcare and Obamacare and these things. And the Obama administration launched something called healthcare.gov, which was like the flagship website through which you could access health insurance. It crashed immediately. And it was a huge scandal at the time. Massive digital government failure. And I'm going to give a few more examples. This one is also quite famous. It's from the Netherlands. So the Dutch benefits agency used an AI system, which used an algorithm to basically racially profile people, and excluded hundreds of thousands of people from benefits that they were actually entitled to. It's a huge scandal. Lots of people committed suicide, so it had real kind of implications in real life. Minister had to resign, and the Dutch government since has introduced what they call an algorithm registry, where every single AI tool has to be like uploaded and stored public in an algorithm registry. This one, we're in the UK, you might be familiar with this one, the UK Post Office Horizon scandal. So the UK Post Office bought an accounting software from Fujitsu, which had some it caused some accounting errors, which made it seem as if several hundred postmasters were basically like stealing post, and they all got fired. And this is a scandal that's now been going for like 7-8 years, and the inquiry just reported, I think, a couple of months ago, and it's still going on. It's like a huge failure. This one is from Sweden, my country. About 9 months ago, one of the regional governments there and launched a healthcare platform based on Oracle's Millennium platform. They spent about 600 million euros and 5 years developing this platform, and they had to take it down on the first day that it was launched. It turned out that this platform had actually been developed for the American healthcare market, which is a private healthcare market, and just didn't work in a public healthcare setting. So 600 million euros, 5 years worth of work, hundreds of consultants, and just like a really simple, basic error. There's lots of them. South Africa, Home Office has loads of problems with this mainframe. Taiwan, huge data leaks. I believe that the government leaked the personal details of every single citizen. Maybe Wen can tell us more about this later. Mexico, important data from the government of the president leaked. Kenya, the business registration agency leaked really sensitive data, including of some important people like the president and the previous president. I could go on and on. Every country has these issues. It just keeps on happening. This is a slightly old report, but I still think it's really true. The World Bank says that more than 80% of large government IT projects fail. 80%. It's that's really big. And considering we're in a public sector where basically almost everything that we do is mediated through technology, this is massive. And so in my kind of perspective, my assessment of the situation, what is causing all these failures is a fundamental lack of digital capacity in the state, in the public sector, in government departments, in local governments, and kind of across the board. When I was at UNITAC, I led the development of this report, Global Review of Smart City Governance Practices. We looked at hundreds of local governments across the world, looked at their governance practices and found that depending on the region, something like between 35% and 86% of smart cities initiatives are constrained by a lack of skills. Iona has written about this, and I think this quote here from her paper on governing digitalization as urbanization kind of starts getting at the heart of the matter. We kind of ended up in a situation where we've spent decades and decades of outsourcing IT services to the private sector. First, going back kind of 25, 30 years to what we might call systems integrators, like the big IT companies, SAP, Microsoft, Oracle, Fujitsu, etc. And then more recently, in the last maybe 10 years or so, through collaborations with the big Silicon Valley and similar type of companies like Meta and others. And so it's like the public sector is almost like it's given up on digital, and it's easier to do these things through contracts and outsourcing than actually building the right kind of capacity in-house. And it kind of feeds a weird sense, I think, particularly among our public leaders, that technology is somehow easy. Many of these companies have been really successful with tech, and there's a kind of sense that technology is easy. You don't have to put the budget, you don't have to do the training, you don't have to have the skills, you don't need to manage these projects in a good way. It kind of links a little bit maybe to this technology as magic, which I see a lot in the public sector. I couldn't help but put this example up here as well. Ukraine verse. It's a new initiative announced by a company called BizTech. I think we can play tech buzzword bingo here. AI, metaverse, digital twins, etc. They seem to have really sold this to some Ukrainian mayors, particularly like the mayor of the city of Mykolaiv, who's currently in a war, seems to have invested in this. I've seen this a lot with my work at UN Habitat, that mayors, city managers, public leaders, they kind of buy into this hype, the buzzwords, and then you end up with nothing. I can give an example. I was in a meeting a couple of years ago with the Ukrainian mayor and a representative from a French technology company that's building digital twins. And the company is really making the case that a digital twin can solve all the problems in the city, from waste management to mobility to planning. And for a mayor that's really keen to kind of modernize in this way, that's something that's really it seems it's kind of an easy sell in a sense. And then we end up with these kind of things. Ukraine verse. I don't know. The other thing I wanted to show here is the kind of smart city concept developed by McKinsey. This is Konza City in Kenya, about 70-80 kilometers outside of the capital of Nairobi. And it's just, I mean, I don't want to pick particularly on Kenya. This is happening all over Africa and the Middle East. But this kind of idea that our old cities have failed, and what we need to do is build new cities far away from where people live and work, etc., and call them smart cities, right? Just like the old city is full of slums and complicated things like traffic and so on, and let's just build a shining new city based on a really basic blueprint. And it keeps happening. I mean, again, this could have been pretty much from any country, but we're in the UK, so I picked a UK example. A couple of months ago, the UK government signed a new major partnership with Google. What are they saying? Will help rid taxpayer of ball and chain legacy tech and aim to upskill 100,000 civil servants in tech and AI. Maybe it will happen. There's a bunch of campaigners that seems to think that this is very naive. So do I. I'd like to, like with a room here with a lot of planners and urbanists, I think it's kind of an interesting comparison to compare urban planning with tech governance. Urban planning has its problems, and urban governance, of course, has its problems as well. But we have this kind of fundamental agreement within urban governance about public and private space, and the role of urban planning is to, I mean, broadly define what is public and what is private. And then on top of kind of planning rules, etc., we also have building control, etc., that puts in place rules around fire safety and heights of buildings and all. I mean, you know all of this kind of stuff. It's kind of a system that's been developed imperfectly, to be fair, but it's been developed, and it kind of it's been developed over hundreds of years, and there's a kind of agreement between the private sector, who of course is doing a lot of the building in construction companies and so on, and the public sector who's doing the regulating around it. And in tech, we just don't have this. We just don't have it. And this is almost like an example. It's like, imagine that a construction company would come to the UK government and say, we want you to build a highway here, a bridge here. We want you to hire us to do it. And then on top of it, we want to put a toll road, and we're going to get all the benefit. It's a bit like that, right? And we've ended up with this huge inequality between the public and the private sector. Google is so big and powerful compared to a government like the UK, that this almost seems like the only way of doing things. And I think it's only going to get worse with AI and with all the hype that's happening at the moment. I just again put some headlines from different parts of the world around AI and the AI hype that everyone seems so kind of bought into. So I want to say a little bit about the organization that I lead. We're called Teaching Public Service in the Digital Age, and we're funded about 5 years ago by a group of practitioners and academics within the field of what we call digital government. So people really concerned with public administration in the state, governance, but also digital technologies. And basically, our mission is to improve the way that public leaders think and know about digital technologies. And our work is centered around what we call the digital era competencies. There are 8 of them. We talk specifically not about digital competencies, but about digital era competencies. And there are two reasons for that. One is that there are lots of people in the public sector with technical skills on AI, on data science, on programming, etc. But what we see is that it's the managers, it's the public servants, it's the people that are not technically trained that are really lacking a kind of an understanding of what digital can and cannot do. And so we're not necessarily talking about technical skills, we're talking about skills that are needed in order to be an effective public administrator or public leader in this digital era. And they are things like valuing users, being able to understand and mitigate risks around security, ethics, etc. Working with multidisciplinary teams and creating partnerships across organizations. Iteration and agile, moving away from the kind of traditional waterfall way of doing project management in the public sector to being able to work in a much more iterative and agile way around technologies. Overcoming barriers, so really thinking in a kind of innovation, having an innovation mindset and thinking about how to overcome things. Openness, so really thinking about open government, open data, accountability and transparency. Data and AI, of course, having an understanding both of the opportunities that data and AI provide, but also the risks and potential harms. And then a final one, which is what we call understanding digital affordances. So having a kind of both a positive and a critical mindset when it comes to digital technologies, trying to understand what they can do, but also what they can not do. So you don't get into a situation where blockchain seems to be the most important thing to invest in right now, but actually thinking carefully about what digital can and cannot do. So this is kind of core to what we do, and our mission is a world where all public leaders in local governments, in regional governments, and in national governments have these kinds of competencies. And we really believe that by having a mix of these competencies, we can avoid some of those digital government failures that I was talking about. Then we've also developed a set of open source educational and training materials. We have an 8-unit open source syllabus. It can be slotted into lots of different kinds of master's degrees, but it's been really focused on Masters of Public Administration and Masters of Public Policy. But also we see it used in planning schools and in programs on urban innovation and urban governance. And you can kind of see the topics here, like an intro about what is digital era government, components of digital systems, iteration and agile, user focus and design, 2 data units, one on the opportunities and one on the harms, working in the open, and one on overcoming the legal, financial, and organizational barriers to change. And around this, we built a whole ecosystem of different kinds of materials. So we just published recently a set of teaching case studies. We do lots of trainings, both of academics, of educators, professors, and we have a network of about 350 professors around the world in 55 countries. There's about 100 universities in 35 countries that have adopted this material. And we're also increasingly doing training directly with the public sector around this kind of material as a way to start building capacity. So in a couple of weeks, I'm coming back to London to do some training with a UK National Archives who we are collaborating with on this kind of stuff. So I just want to close with a quote from Helen Margetts and Patrick Dunleavy's recent paper, where they looked at how Silicon Valley has driven the current hype into data science and AI, which is a really good paper. I really recommend it. Increasingly, policy, administrative, financial, and regulatory decisions indeed the whole government's capacity to govern will depend on part of the capacity of administrative elites to understand and deploy data-intensive technologies and manage their political economy relationships with the technology industry. This is absolutely fundamental, and in order to do it, we need to make sure that our public servants have the right kind of understanding of digital. And this means, so the people who are not interested in technology need to become interested in technology and start acquiring these kind of skills and competencies. Thank you.
This was such an exciting session with, you can see now with a number of questions and interest in it. So please join me in thanking Pontus. And we're going to seamlessly slide into the next session, which is the practitioner panel. We have one cancellation, but we have three presenters, starting from Sophie, and then Champaka and Wen. And you were...
Great, yeah, okay. So we start with Sophie Naue from the UN Innovation Technology Accelerator for Cities and Hafen City University, who's going to talk about digital water management in Somaliland, in Hargeisa. Over to you, Sophie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pontus. Let me quickly...
I think it should be open. Oh. I will try.
Yeah, thank you, Pontus, and good... You have a timer? Okay, good. Perfect. Yeah, good morning also from my side. My name is Sophie Naue. I'm a principal investigator at UNITAC. UNITAC is the United Nations Innovation Technology Accelerator for Cities. It's a partnership among UN Habitat, UNOICT, which is the Office for Information, Communication and Technology in New York, and the Hafen City University, where our lab is actually based in Hamburg. And today I'm going to present one use case or one applied research project we have been developing with UNITAC in cooperation with our partners in Hargeisa Water Agency. So this presentation is called Leveraging Digital Solution to Bridge Water Access for the Urban Poor in Hargeisa, Somaliland. Yeah, before I start with this project, just a few words about UNITAC. UNITAC is an accelerator lab. We do support local and national governments in their digital transition. We usually work with diverse teams of data scientists, developers, urban planners. From my background, I'm an urban planner, environmental engineers, and depending on the projects, we have local teams in the countries from UN Habitat, a team of developers in Germany, but also in this case, in this project, in Hargeisa, we are working, for example, with a developer in Nairobi, with 2 local consultants in Hargeisa and a team in Hamburg. Yeah. What we do is we see the city as our research lab. So we have a multi-stakeholder approach. We co-create together with local NGOs, different stakeholders, and we develop technology. But we try to develop technology not only for the sake of developing technology, actually embedding it in a broader stakeholder engagement process, citizens engagement processes, and then bring applications from prototype into implementation. In this project in Hargeisa Water, or with Hargeisa Water Agency, what we have done with UNITAC, we launched an open call to select innovation projects. So local governments could hand in their ideas, their concepts, but also their ideas of their project teams. So this was launched 2024 in February. This was the second call from UNITAC, and we selected this project with Hargeisa Water Agency to develop a mobile app to connect water vendors and users in disadvantaged settlements, so people in informal settlements, IDP communities who do not have piped water access. And the idea was to develop an application so that they could have mobile-based water orders to order their water. Here, the challenge was, or is, this project is ongoing until end of the year, to eliminate middlemen and then to ensure transparency in water pricing and enhance affordability and also water quality. This is actually an ongoing project, and I will show a few of the parts of the tool that we have developed, but also focus on the process around that. And what's particularly important here in this process is that it is developed together with Hargeisa Water Agency, so we are trying to support at UNITAC on their needs. It's a kind of a water Uber, you can later see. Very quickly on the water challenges in Hargeisa. I don't know who is familiar with the situation in Hargeisa, but we have 30 to 37% of its population only has access to piped water. So that means that a lot of population do not have access to piped water and rely actually on kind of private organized water vendors, which are quite expensive for the communities. It's not moving to the next slide. Sorry. Okay, yeah, as I mentioned in the beginning, this whole process is not only to develop tech, it's the idea to embed it in a broader stakeholder and engagement process, so to ensure that this application is locally grounded, user-centered, and also culturally accepted. We had done a lot of research activities, so individual interviews we have conducted with water vendors, but also with community residents into different pilot locations. We have done focus group discussions with women, IDPs, local elderly people, and different water vendors, stakeholder consultations. And what we're doing right now is the process of actually user testing this application. So this is a little bit the process that we are established at UNITAC. We selected 2 pilot areas in Hargeisa. One is an IDP camp and one is an so-called regular informal settlement, if you can call it regular, and both settlements do, or residents do spend more than 20 to 40% of their daily income on water. So this was why we selected those settlements, but they are only representative, for a part of the city. I would like to share a few community insights. Focus groups are currently ongoing, but what residents face actually in Hargeisa is long waiting times, overpricing, and no transparency in the rates. Mostly women and girls fetch water and have to bear this bundle, and there is a big community interest in reduced prices up front, to know how much they would pay for water, to track their deliveries so that they don't spend too much time in waiting home or going for fetching water. And one very important point from the community or from the focus groups was that digital literacy, so that we also do develop USSD functions, voice features, so that this is taken into account in this project. We also did focus group discussion and interviews with water vendors. There are different groups, water tankers, donkey carts. So to see there were a few concerns related to such an application. The fear that transparency also reduces the margin of their price, what they are getting, their benefits. Then they fear bureaucratic demands, which is quite usual to fear those. But there was a strong appetite on this to create a new market reach, to offer their services to a new market, and quite a big interest. We received a few, or we're currently discussing a few recommendations from the vendor side with Hargeisa Water Agency. Hargeisa Water Agency, they want to set up an official water price, and there was a discussion about subsidies and delivery fees, how this could be embedded in this project. If there is a delivery fee, if I deliver to an informal settlement that is super difficult to reach, for example, if there are a point system on loyalty points delivering to very far away informal settlements. So there is an ongoing discussion with Hargeisa Water Agency on those topics, with water vendors and UNITAC embedded in that. With this, I come over to the application. So this is the application, how it looks right now. It's an application which consists of 3 elements. You have a user or an admin dashboard for Hargeisa Water Agency to monitor prices, to receive calls from the call center, and to oversee the whole process. You have a customer application and a vendor application. So here is the dashboard, how it looks at the moment. You can manage customer information, place the order, manage the vendors, monitor complaints, for example, and then you have the call center that receives also orders that came in on via phone. You have the customer application where you can search for a vendor, you can see the vendor on a map, you can see the rating, which is a very important element here. You can place your water order, you can schedule water order for next day, you can schedule also water orders together with your neighbors, and you have a real-time tracking function and receive push notification. Then you have a possibility to include a wallet and pay mobile payment options, but also the possibility to still pay in cash. And one of the most important features was to actually rate the vendor and to give feedback. And last but not least, you have the vendor application where the vendor can offer their services, set their status, manage their water orders, and get routing support. So this is how the application looks at the moment. We had yesterday hired a UI UX designer, so very happy that it will improve in the next weeks. Also related to digital literacy, I think there is a lot that still can be improved to easily understand this process. To finalize this presentation, Hargeisa Water Agency in the meantime did a process of registering water vendors and already implementing this all into this admin dashboard. So they had on-site registration drives and successfully registered 300. Good, thank you, Pontus. 316 water vendors. They have now this ID cards. And are registered in that system. The UNITAC team on site is in parallel doing the summer the user testing for the application, so testing of usability, accessibility, and mainly identifying where are the challenges, where are the barriers, and how we can improve this application to be rolled out by end of the year in the country. And this is my last slide. So what we're currently doing, or what are next steps where we're in, is conducting a target outreach and awareness campaign. So we are hiring a local media firm who supports with a social media campaign, who does small clips, how to use this application, how to register. We provide also trainings, work with community champions to promote the application. And a very big component is also capacity building and handover. It's all run, we had a development server, but it's now all on Hargeisa Water Agency server on deployment. And as you know, when a project ends, it's already the second phase, so we're thinking about potentials for scaling. Hargeisa Water Agency is in the Global Water Operators Project with Uganda Water, so there's a question of how Uganda could learn from that project and how this project could be also scaled to Uganda. And yeah, I hope I did it on time. I tried to run through it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Really interesting project. Next up, we have Champaka Rajagopal from the World Bank to talk about data governance in Kenya. Over to you.
Thank you, Pontus. Thank you, Oyana, for having us here. Today, I'm going to share our work with the City Planning Labs initiative on municipal spatial data infrastructure. This is a bank trust-funded program it's also co-funded by SURGE and SECO, which is the Swiss Economic Cooperation Agency. MSDI, or Municipal Spatial Data Infrastructure, is essentially directed at addressing centralization of geospatial data, largely at the national government levels across countries that we've been working with. We started off in Indonesia, and we've now scaled up to 7 countries where MSDI is being adapted and adopted in variable ways across cities that have varying capacities, particularly focused on small and medium-sized towns. In most and after Indonesia, we've now been more engaged with Kenya, with Nepal, with Uzbekistan, and more recently Iraq as well. And in most of these cases, what we've found is that data is centralized, and many of you spoke about this earlier as well. It's no surprise that data is centralized at national government levels. And typically, these are manifested through missions such as the Smart Cities mission, National Spatial Data Infrastructure initiatives, One Data Policy. In Indonesia, for example, we have Satu Data. In India, we have One Data. So there's multiple ways in which national governments basically discharge their interests in centralizing data and information and power at the national government levels. There are 3 primary concerns: technology bias, national initiatives such as the National Spatial Data Infrastructure remain largely at the policy level, or they are fragmented in their implementation at local levels. As a result, weak municipal governments are unable to mobilize geospatial data for judicious allocation of resources. And we're particularly talking not just about planning, but service delivery at municipal levels. Arm's length approaches in investments further weaken municipal governments. There's fragmentation of municipal governance, leaving communities less able to handle risks that they face ever so frequently in the form of flooding and many other climate change concerns, or any other form of concerns that are plagued by lack of basic services and access to basic services. We draw on 3 bodies of academic literature to inform our practice work. The first is pertaining to technology bias, where Ben Green, for instance, as well as my colleague Gayatri Singh, who leads this effort, they've argued that governments wear tech goggles generally, that and whoever wears these tech goggles perceive every ailment of urban life as a technology problem, and to selectively diagnose only issues that technology can solve. And many of you brought this up in the previous session. There's also another perspective that civic engagement, urban design, and criminal justice, for instance, are also the result of inefficiencies that technology can solve. And for example, we're looking at, say, predictive policing, or setting up kiosks across cities in New York. For instance, we have Link NYC, which in fact is actually a private sector initiative which sort of leads to discriminatory practices in terms of making data accessible to all. The result is a plethora of apps which are weakly coordinated, and coordination is the problem here, and we understand coordination is a quintessential problem as viewed across disciplines. And the second aspect, the second body of work that we draw on is data as public infrastructure. And we also draw on this analogy of roads, but to make a very different fundamental point. We are arguing here that data needs to be treated as public infrastructure, just like roads and navigating oneself on the road requires, and there are multiple actors who are using road networks, and to access road networks effectively, one needs to be, there are regulations that are established by the government, and users of road networks need to follow these regulations. And so data also, just like road networks and transport, or land, labor, and capital, needs to be regulated by the state. And a whole range of actors would then need to sort of align with these regulatory derivatives at the local levels. Now, there's a concern here that, and we draw on the body on data custodianship, Ian Macer's work, for instance, where he argues that regulating data is not exactly the same as regulating land, labor, or capital, for instance, because the information is expandable, it can be substituted for other resources, it's transportable and virtually pretty much instantaneously, it's diffusive. Data can be shared but not exchanged. So there are many aspects to data that do not make it the same as other forms of public resources. And then what becomes important is the question about custodianship. And this is a concept that we've not discussed yesterday, but I'd like to bring forth. The importance of custodianship. We're all producing, the multiple producers and users of data. Governments produce data, private sector companies produce data, all of us here are producing data as individuals. And so, it's important that each producer and user of data then becomes custodian, where each one does not own the data, but are custodians of it on behalf of the state. Custodianship here becomes important because it deals with defining rights to access, rights of access to databases, and specifying responsibilities and accountabilities. It also means that government information assets are distributed across a wide range of public bodies rather than concentrated in a single body. And finally, the challenge faced by all governments in this context is to place data stewardship as close as possible to the origins of data. So these are the third body of work that we actively draw on, and my colleague Gayatri Singh has been quite involved in this in the practice as well as scholarly spaces, is to look at the debates around state capacity and federalism. We're not just looking at technical capacity or human resource capacities here, but we're actually looking at data, at governance autonomy at the local levels, which can inform national governments effectively to make policies that are responsive to the ground, but also to sort of follow principles of subsidiarity, where those who should make decisions at relevant levels will actually make those decisions in the context of data governance as well. And our focus in city planning labs is to build strong institutional relationships across state markets and societies. I think Bidisha brought this up yesterday as how we need to start looking at relationships across the state markets as well as the civil society as strong as governance and as relationships, as opposed to, looking at failure of one institution or the other, and also looking at local governance autonomy to inform national policy. Now, within this sort of a theoretical framework, we have identified in the 12 cities across 7 countries that we're working with, we've identified 4 major types of gaps. One is pertaining to the absence of municipal governments as a whole to engage with data governance. The second is about capacity, where we're not just looking at technical and human resource capacities, but also at coordination capacities. And the third is about access to data, because if data is disaggregated across multiple agencies, then there needs to be intercompatible data sets across departments. So that coordination is important, as well as classification of data, because not all data is open. We advocate open data, but we're also saying that there needs to be complex contractual agreements between municipal governments and other levels of the government, as well as private sector and civil society organizations and communities, et cetera, to be able to make sure there's this custodianship of data in a disaggregated way. And then treating technological innovations as an end is typically a problem that we see across all cities, where we're advocating not just, we're advocating the need for data to be made accessible free of cost to everybody. it's a tall order, because in other segments of the bank now there are shifts to monetization of many different kinds of assets through privatization. So building up this argument from within the bank is a tall order, but we're persisting on that agenda. And so we have a much wider framework that we've adopted and developed. This started with Indonesia, for instance, along with the Singapore Land Authority, which was working with us to frame this, to frame our work, which is institutions, people, data, and systems. Institutions are pertaining to roles, regulations, derivative regulations that will enable national policies to respond effectively to local government levels, at local levels, and to enable custodianship. People in the form of, not just, also in the form of, primarily in the form of building strong relationships and partnerships between the state and other institutions. Data as classification as well as data standards for intercompatibility of data sets, and systems as not just dashboards, but geoportals which enable free access to data, as well as enabling tools, access to tools that will help deepen, bring governments closer to the society. Now, in Kenya, we're working with 3 municipal governments, and I have one case to share on Kitengela. The urban governance structure in Kenya is, of course, I don't need to mention this, but there are 47 county governments and municipal boards at the local government level. Municipal governments are very strong politically, because basically they have, there's possibilities for elected representatives at the municipal level. They're present at the their presence at the county levels enables them to even impeach the governor if there are differences. So there are strong local governments here. The national government established the had begun establishing the national spatial data infrastructure in 2001, and it continues to remain latent or dormant within very similar frameworks as the IPDS. We've initiated work through these 3 cities supported by the State Department of Housing and Urban Development under the Kenya Urban Support Program 2.0, where we're looking at federated data governance structures. Pontus mentioned these complex arrangements that exist across governments to actually enable data infrastructure across different levels. Kitengela, for instance, reached out to us to address speculative development in Kitengela using geospatial data governance, not just the use of data for urban planning, but to govern data better in order to support judicious allocation of resources. In Kenya, the context of planning, I can elaborate on this a little bit later, but there are multiple plans at the county as well as the city government levels. At the county level, we have the physical and land use development plan, a spatial plan. It's not an investment plan. And then there is at the city government level, at the municipal level, not at the city government level, but the municipal level, we have the integrated development plan, which is an investment plan, but it's not a spatial plan. So what Kitengela is doing actually is to mobilize MSDI as a means for them to integrate both these plans so that all investments that are made towards infrastructure in the city are spatialized, and then investments that are prioritized across those projects are made visible and known to everybody. So there's good levels of, we're still in the process, but that's the effort that is ongoing. We worked with the city government to basically come up with a full roadmap on how to institutionalize MSDI, and this process is still underway. And the government has also expressed interest to actually scale this up across multiple counties and municipalities as well. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Champaka. Really interesting. Next up, we have Wen-i Lin from the National Taipei University to talk about planning of science parks.
Yep. Okay, so thank you for your coming. And today I'm going to talk about the Taiwanese government and also the planning expert, we think about the next generation, about the science park. But before that, you need to know a little bit about the geography of Taiwan. We are in here. And normally, this island have very sad history because who become the superpower, who controls this island? So Spanish have come. Our ancient name, actually Formosa, is from Spanish. And the Dutch people also come, build a castle in there. And also the French also come. They have a port in Keelung, and the Chinese also come. And then we have a Japanese empire. They build the first colony to show the modernized example to the Western people. They say we can become like a British. So they use Taiwan as like a modern colony, try to show to the world. And then the Chiang Kai-shek government, they fail. They run from the mainland to Taiwan, and then around the 1990s, we become democratized. So we are always in the front line. And this is like, we also, for the USA, after Second World War strategy, like a plan, we also put into the first island chain to block the Soviet Union, the communist power, to enter the Pacific Sea. So we are always in the front line, but now, even in the tech war, we also in the front line. For example, like recently, we are very confused. Donald Trump say we like a thief. Yeah, we steal the US chips business. And the NVIDIA CEO say, thank you, Taiwan. Yeah, because you work so hard for our AI industry. So we feel very confused whether we are, quality labor or we are thief. And also, people always think Taiwan, you tireless, self-inflective, workaholic. So yeah, you don't need to rest. But actually, we are human beings. And in the literature, we have been called the orphan of Asia, because that is, before the Second World War, a very famous, Taiwanese elite, he used this name to call the Taiwanese people. We are the orphan of Asia, but we are also the human. And, look like we are tireless worker to work for to become like a refined, dirty industry. We are still the dirty industry worker, work for the lofty cost AI infrastructure. We continually, 24 hours, build the chips. So the Taiwan semiconductor company, the most famous TSMC founder, he have a story. He say, because we have lots of earthquake, he say we don't need to get any regulation or warning. Anything happened, even during the midnight, in 1 hour, all technicians need to come to the factory. No matter it's 2 p.m. or it's 2 a.m., you just need to come. All your family need to recognize that this is your collective responsibility. So all that kind of thing actually control, but that is all about survival. We are not, we don't want to be a workaholic. We just want to survive. So you see, the first science park actually, they announced the initiative after 2 weeks when the US government decided to abandon Taiwan. They decide to cut the relationship, and then they go with China. After 2 weeks, Taiwanese government say, okay, we are going to have a new science park. And then, before the Asia financial crisis, we see the problem, and we begin to invest more. So every time we have a crisis, we invest more. In 2003, we see the dot-com bubble, and we invest more. Another science park happened. So now, around all this corridor, we have a 3 main cluster. And that actually, our science park size is much bigger than the UK size. One time I go to the UK Bristol Science Park, and they are very proud that they employed many people. I say, how many? They say, oh, around 500 to 600. We say, we actually in our Hsinchu Science Park, we hire like 200,000 people. And most of them, they have a master or BA or PhD degree. So now we think about the next generation of science park, and that is a new moment for the survival crisis, because all that US-China tech war put Taiwan in a critical situation, because we become like a checkpoint. And also, we need to enforce our Silicon Share narrative. Why is Silicon narrative? Silicon Share narrative is because we always abandon. We are orphaned. So how orphaned try to find survival in the area, try to make himself become important. So we produce lots of chips. That kind of silicon stuff and the semiconductor stuff. So make us other people cannot abandon us. That is like a Silicon Share narrative. But now look like we have a new crisis because Trump asked us to move the factory to the United States, and also Japan wants us to go, and also Germany wants us to go. So Taiwan become another time a place we can, just leave that to another superpower, and we have a peace, and we don't need to care about the democracy or freedom of Taiwanese people. So, and also we have that kind of industrial imbalance, because all that kind of NVIDIA, they just outsource all that production to Taiwanese company. So they don't locate in science park. Just the local industry and also the local semiconductor producer, they are in science park. So become like a mono industry, single type industry dominate the science park. So that become a TSMC-led domination. So because this company become too powerful, and also the biggest shareholder is Taiwanese government for TSMC. So the whole nation thinks like we need to sacrifice, and we need to 100% support TSMC because the Silicon Share narrative, we need to protect ourselves. But actually all that kind of industry generate not many jobs, and only less 7%, so that become the over-reliance and the fragile socio-economic return. So, and also small island, how we can secure lots of land, labor, water, and energy, that become also a difficult issue. So, in the past 2 years, we work with the CECI, one of the main science park, like engineer. Previously, we have invited them to think about come here, but they cannot. But this is the project we work with them. And finally, we have lots of negotiation. We give them some advice. That advice, actually, we are not very happy. But because that advice, we borrow from the discourse about the new industrial urbanism. But we have no choice because lots of negotiation, lots of government request. So finally, we try to think about the Taiwanese reality and also the planning struggle, because we already in a very a compact city. So we already have lots of misuse. And also in the inner city, we have lots of underused, old industrial land. But that kind of land never turned to the science park, because science park need to be big and they need to be in the a rural area, because that is more difficult to identify the pollution and also easier to manage. So this is the thing of our misuse. So you can see the factory beside the resident area. So this is the red line, the industrial area, and this is a residential area, all mixed together. This is our reality. But so we think about why we just turn this part to become the science park and become the more spread. Not a big size development science park, become different small unit. But we meet many negotiation, and the first one is the regulation. Have a lots of regulation barrier, and also the land interest, because the local government also don't like this kind of solution, because local government want this land to become like a much valuable, like a residential land, and the general tax for them rather than the science park controlled by central government, because the whole science park land controlled by the central government. And also all that kind of rezoning lack the incentive. And also the central government think that it's too difficult because speed is so important. Because all that kind of speed actually tie with all that kind of chips production like racing. We need to be faster than Samsung. We need to be faster than Intel. So we actually set up the deadline about the chip production. And then we go back to see when we need to begin. So all that kind of process make the path dependency. And also, the old industry land become the statecraft is unreachable because lots of barrier, lots of interest issue, and also the government, they prefer to use the big size and the quick farmer land or national agriculture land. And also the old industry owner, they need to contribute to this R&D investment and also need to give their income to the state if they enter the science park. So they also reluctant to do that. And also, whole science park building have a lot of challenge. Only 2 companies they can do the science park planning now because they need to do everything together. That is very crazy. They need to do the environmental assessment and also the building design at the same time, because no time to wait. So only 2 companies, they have all that kind of branch. And also the single government model in managing also meant then to think about we should keep the whole science park. And also the Taiwanese, we still prefer that kind of direct service. We like face-to-face negotiation. And also, the science park management is very old-fashioned. They don't want anything digitalized. Even the data need to transfer by the phone call because anything digitalized have an issue to have an information security issue. Recently, I have a scandal like TSMC, they lead the secret because working from home and they take the picture about the data. So also have a lot of issue about because science park, around the science park had lots of community. I call them street have no name, inspired by you too. And also they have a lot of discontent about the environment, resource allocation, environment pollution, and also the housing market exploration. So all this kind of science park like elite, they have a lot of capital and they don't have a life. So they just invest. So they like spreading the cancer of property speculation. Thank you.